Hello. After when you pin your side seam, so you attached your back with your front, you need to machine it. So I already machined inside. So if you look, to be honest, I found this is the most fiddliest seam I had to machine. And so you have to be quite careful when you're machining and where you're stopping and finishing. I will definitely advise you to tack that seam first and check, make sure it's in the right places, and then machine it. So I'm just going to check, make sure it's all accurate and it's in the right places how it should be. So the next stage would be is to press your seam allowance, press your seam as well, and snip some seam allowance around the pleat. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press my seam flat, just flat, and also in some ways stretch a little bit so it lays flat around the seam allowance, only seam allowance. So if you don't have a steam or good iron, just use wet cloth. You wet your seam allowance. So you wet your seam allowance and then you slightly stretch them, only seam allowance. So I can't stress enough, we're only talking about seam allowance here. Okay. So here's from like that curvy area, so you need to slightly stretch so your seam allowance would be long enough to be open. So now when it's that done and you're happy, yes, by the way, it's a good opportunity for you to take all your tailor stocking out from the seam. So I will do it before you're pressing. So the next part would be is press your seam allowance open here. Again, take time. There we go. So now it comes to the point of where the pleats are, your pleat. And now, you see that? So that's your pleat have to be that way on your back. So we're going to open it so we can iron your seam allowance properly. So I'm going to tidy up here first. So I've got some other seam allowance from my front panel. So I'm going to press them first so they not interfere that way. So then I'm going to flip my side seam allowance and press that open. Okay. The next part would be I'm going to trim some seam allowance inside because it creates so much thickness in there. So if you look inside there, so that seam allowance here from, which is continuous line from your side panel. So I'm just going to cut that completely out. So hope you can see. So that, and that's seam allowance, which just comes from the waist line. I don't know, can you see it there? That's this one. So I just trimmed it here along that area. See, it's been folded like that. So I'm just going to cut that fabric here. Okay. So you can, I'm sure you can see what I'm doing. You see that? So that's part of the fabric which has been folded inside here. So that's part which has been folded here on your seam allowance. Just cut that way to create much thinner. So that part's that way. Again, iron it straight away. It's much more thinner. Yeah. So just did cut some extra fabric here, which is came from that seam. So it creates that thickness here. So I'll cut that completely, but I kept all that. Okay. So now it's lays nice and flat. Okay. Now for me to flip my the back pleat over, I need to snip in this area. So again, if you watch carefully, so I'm going to draw the line. We've got this little corner here, which is from the pleat. So right to where you machined. So we're going to snip in that way. So from that corner, I'm just going to cut my line here. You can see better. Okay, from that point there, you snip into your seam. Okay, so the seam where you are touching your side panel. So be careful, because you do it once, and let's say if you've done wrong, it's pretty much difficult to fix it. So then you can flip it over to that side. So perfect. You press that, and get some. That's really, really nice. So check your seams. So I'm going to check here a little bit, because need to be shrink that seam to shrink. It doesn't show to another side here. So just checking both sides. Make sure it's okay. So then I'm going to lift that seam, because it leaves the print, and I'm going to press out. Okay. Give a good press straight away. So it's quite important how you do it. And then they're just going to flip over, so you can see, to put that away, so you can see what I've done, and also see how my pleat is lays down in the back. Just move that. So you can see now, so that's my seam. It's absolutely perfect. Okay, and then you go to down to my pleats there, which is still at the moment is open, but it lays nicely and flat. And I'm going to show you how we're going to machine it. So in the next episode, I'm going to show you how we're dealing with our pleat. Yeah, but yeah, check. Make sure you're happy with that. Give a good press. This is the time when you press properly, and ready to the next stage. Thank you.